Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Tuesday, November 23rd, 2004. The City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Meetings are open to the public, and we do invite you to join us. For members of the public unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live via webcast from the city's homepage or heard via council phone. Members, it is now 10:15 a.m. and we have 9 members present, one shy of a quorum, but we also have a couple of presentations scheduled for today. Let me also announce that this is Thanksgiving week, and after the Thanksgiving holiday this Friday, there will be no council. Council will stand in recess this Friday. We will meet today, we will meet tomorrow, and then we won't meet again actually until December 7th, upon return from a National League of Cities conference in Indianapolis. So to begin today's meeting, let me ask Mr. Garcetti, since he's nearest to the podium, to maybe lead us in the flag salute. And then we'll get underway with our first presentation by Ms. Perry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I can ask everybody to please rise and face the flag. Put your hand on your heart and begin with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Perry for our first presentation today.
Oh, hey, how are you? Okay, great. I have a stand-in today. We were supposed to have Jim Brown here today. He's the founder and director of the AmeriCAN Foundation, and standing in his place today will be Mr. John Gardner, who is a partner in this endeavor, and Ambassador Dwayne Moody, who is a representative here in the United States for Mr. Brown, and also the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And thank you, Mr. Gardner, for standing in for Jim Brown, again, who is the executive director of the AmeriICAN Foundation, and Ambassador Moody. AmeriICAN is a nonprofit organization for social change with a for-profit organization as well. In 1988, the National Football League Hall of Famer and motion picture actor Jim Brown founded the AmeriICAN program, a powerful life management skills and human development program designed to help anyone regardless of race, age, religion, gender, or socioeconomic status. It allows individuals to experience success by equipping them with tools to overcome obstacles and achieve their full potential. The program emphasizes elevating self-esteem, achieving success through self-determination, and creating an attitude, a change from I can't to I can. In 1993, the AmeriICAN Foundation for Social Change was incorporated as a nonprofit organization for the purpose of expanding the services to communities and individuals that would otherwise be unavailable because of economic hardship. The need for the foundation became evident when in '92, the AmeriICAN facilitators initiated a truce between rival gangs in Watts, California. The foundation provides resources to continue this movement to bring about peace and social change. I asked Mr. Brown and Mr. Gardner here today and Ambassador Moody to come in today so I could recognize them for what they do on a daily basis, and in particular for what they did for one woman in the 9th Council District. The AmeriICAN Foundation came to the assistance of Kiva Byron, the mother of Byron Lee Jr., who was senselessly killed riding his bike in his own neighborhood. You might remember he was a 14-year-old child who was murdered very savagely within a few feet of his own home. 2 of the perpetrators have been arrested and 1 is still outstanding. And although our own Victims Witness Assistance Program through the 77th Division worked very hard and provided support for Kiva with funeral costs and therapy, she was still in need of more financial assistance, and AmeriICAN was there when she needed them. They helped with the remainder of her outstanding bills, got her access to a car, and is helping her obtain employment. They lent her a helping hand in a time of need, and for this I wanted to take the time to thank them for their kindness and their willingness to help. They, along with the members of the 77th Division and the City Attorney's Office, played an important role in supporting this woman and this mother as she deals with the horrific tragedy in her life. So I'd like to present to Mr. Gardner, for Mr. Brown, and to Ambassador Dwayne Moody these certificates and thank them for their commitment to supporting people in need wherever and whenever, and thank you for your great work. Ambassador, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. I'll turn the mic over to John to say a few words on behalf of Jim Brown.
Good morning to the City Council. I am very honored to receive this here recommendation for Mr. Jim Brown and the AmeriICAN program. Also, Mr. Brown and Ambassador Moody also came to my aid when I lost my 16-year-old child to gang violence just a little over a year ago. It's very true what they say about Mr. Brown. He's definitely a community person. He's consistently in the neighborhood trying to get with these young people and teach them a different way of living and get out of this gang mentality. The AmeriICAN program is truly a safe haven for those that want to get out. I'm very honored to receive this. Thank you, Ms. Perry, and the council members.
Introduce Kiva. And I'm pleased to introduce Kiva, Byron's mother, who's here with us, and I'm so glad she had the chance to come by today, because I think we have to remember the decisions that we make here impact the people who live outside the walls of this building, and consider the impacts of that every day. I don't know if you feel like saying anything, Kiva.
Hi. I'd really like to thank Jan Perry, Ambassador Moody. They've really been in my corner from day one. I've gotten such an overwhelming abundance of support. Jim Brown, AmeriICAN, these people have really stood next to me, and they're really laying out a foundation for me. and I'm just so happy. After losing both of my children, one to cancer and one to gang violence, I'm just so glad that there are people that really care. So I'd like to thank everybody in the community and for all their support. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Mr. Ambassador Dwayne Moody. I represent Mr. Jim Brown and the Mayor I Can. Let me start by also commending Ms. Jan Perry for offering us an invitation to come here and to receive this prestigious award. But let me start by saying this, is that A Mayor I Can is about building a support system. When I heard about Ms. Kiva's situation, I immediately got in contact with her and I said that I have been in the entertainment business over 40 years, and what I'm going to do is give all my resources and my connection to you, because you need to have a support system that's going to be consistently there with you to help along the way with Ms. Jan Perry and all the other support systems to pave the way where she'll be able to walk down the street of recovery. So what we decided to do is address her primary needs, which was food, shelter, and clothing. And on behalf of A Mayor I Can, we wrote a check for $4,000, where she'll be able to address her primary need, just as well as one of her wishes on her wish list, to get a headstone for her son, who recently received a scholarship to go to the University of Heaven. That headstone is going to be revealed tomorrow at Inglewood Cemetery on Thanksgiving Eve, whereas each Thanksgiving Eve, we will remember Byron as a catalyst, whereas he lifts people. On behalf of American also, we are going to present her with a job. And along with a job, we are going to give her a key to a car where she'll be able to get to her job. In case she do not want to go to work one day, she can go to that beach and take the pebbles out of her purse and throw into the river and watch the rippling of her smile of her son that's now in the University of Heaven. The most important thing is that A Mayor I Can is very unique, because we have to be able to have the flexibility to address needs like this on a continued basis. And in closing, I would say this is that I'm going to spearhead a movement to create a scholarship in the name of her prince. For every year, we will look for a Byron in each and every 14, 13-year-old, 12-year-old to honor them in the name of Byron, just as well as we did on Mr. John Gardner last year. And in closing, we must continue enjoying this never-ending journey that God has bestowed upon us. Along the way, we have to take our great blessings and share with less fortunate people of the world, for inclusion is the key in which this never-ending journey we all embark upon takes on a life all of its own. And tomorrow, we will do the unveiling of a Prince headstone at Inglewood Cemetery. Thank you very much on behalf of my client, Jim Brown, and American Organization.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry. For our second presentation, Council President Alex Padilla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, colleagues, and members of the public who are here today. It's my pleasure to welcome and introduce to you the mayor-elect of the city of Ensenada, Baja California, the Honorable Cesar Mancillas Amador. Let's give him a round of applause. Just a brief introduction, and by way of his background, prior to his recent election as mayor of Ensenada, he has served in a number of official public positions in the Mexican government, including the governor's subsecretary for Ensenada, Baja California, general director for the Commission of Public Service, governor's secretary of social development for Baja California, and the governor's deputy for social development for the state of Baja California. Now, he comes at a very special time, because next Tuesday, I believe, is his actual swearing in, taking the oath of office, and will become become officially the mayor of Ensenada, California. But what brings him to Los Angeles in Southern California is a multi-day trip. Just yesterday, he was down in Orange County meeting with the mayors of Anaheim and Santa Ana and the county sheriff of Orange County. And today, he's here with us in the city of Los Angeles. He'll be visiting Ms. Han, the port of Los Angeles, later today, as well as the port of Long Beach. And having talked to him briefly and certainly in conversations with mutual friends, I know that they have a big interest in further developing the port of Ensenada, looking at some trade and economic development opportunities for our neighbors just south of the border. But for anybody who's taken that 3 or 4 day cruise out of the port of Los Angeles, you know you go to Catalina, but then you go to Ensenada before coming right back to Los Angeles. We're neighbors just across an international border, but it's a very small community. And so the mayor of Ensenada certainly is someone who has not just an important position for his own city and his own state, but on an international basis, somebody that impacts the vibrancy of the city of Los Angeles as well. Please, let's give once again a warm welcome to Mayor-elect Cesar Mancillas Amador. Bienvenido.
Before we hear from the mayor, Concejal Reyes would like to say a word.
Sin más quería decir, bienvenido a Los Ángeles. He tenido la oportunidad de trabajar con los bomberos de Ensenada. Hemos llevado equipaje, camiones, experiencié una función donde había entrenamiento con los bomberos de Los Ángeles y Ensenada. Y ojalá podamos seguir con este intercambio para mejorar nuestras relaciones y por el bienestar de nuestra gente. Muchas gracias por estando aquí.
Bienvenidos, por favor.
Muchas gracias. Muy buenos días, señoras y señores. Honorable Concilio de la Ciudad de Los Ángeles. Señor Alex Padilla, presidente del Concilio de Los Ángeles. Un saludo para el Mayor Han. Me da muchísimo gusto estar aquí este día. Vengo con un saludo del pueblo de la ciudad de Ensenada, Baja California, México.
I'll do a little translating here. Honorable council members, want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. Also, he's thanking Mayor James Han, who hosted a breakfast this morning. On behalf of the people of Ensenada, he's here to bring warm greetings.
Venimos acompañados de un grupo de empresarios de nuestra ciudad. También viene conmigo un ex gobernador, Ernesto Rufo, y venimos precisamente a ofrecer las oportunidades de negocios que tenemos para la ciudad de Los Ángeles, para la comunidad hispana de Los Ángeles y también para todos aquellos que estén interesados en invertir en nuestro país y sobre todo en Baja California y en Ensenada.
He's brought with him today several representatives of the business community in Ensenada, Mexico, as well as a former governor of the state in an effort to bring the resources of their business community and chambers of commerce to the people of Los Angeles in seeking trade and commercial opportunities.
Yo creo firmemente la oportunidad que tenemos juntos de seguir desarrollándonos, de seguir creciendo. La situación geográfica estratégica de Ensenada, Baja California, es muy importante para la ciudad de Los Ángeles, ya que podemos ser un puerto alternativo para el movimiento de carga a nivel mundial.
Here not only to seek opportunities in general for business and for trade, but specifically take advantage of our geographic locations. We're so close to one another, and specifically the port of Ensenada. The concept is to have the port of Ensenada serve as an alternative port to the port of Los Angeles to better handle the volume of cargo coming in and out of the region.
Por eso estamos aquí. Nuestra intención es conocernos más, estar más cercanos de ustedes, ya que somos vecinos, y queremos que esta oportunidad nueva que viene de crear un puerto nuevo en Ensenada, que nos va a dar grandes ventajas a ambos países, y que yo creo que va a ser una realidad próximamente. Es una zona nueva, virgen, que podemos planear, y este gobierno que encabezaremos muy pronto, en una semana, queremos que sea un gobierno estratégico y que esté planeando, que tenga su plan maestro para los próximos 30 años.
We think this isn't just a concept, it will be reality. And before we really delve into a lot of these opportunities, we wanted to take some time to come and get to know each other first. We're committed to doing this and think this can have a great impact on our regional economies and our mutual cities for the next 30 years and beyond.
Así que yo les agradezco mucho esta oportunidad de conocernos, agradezco mucho este certificado y los esperaremos pronto por Ensenada para seguir nosotros en una relación muy estrecha, no nada más en lo económico, sino también en lo político, en lo social, en el deporte, en la cultura y en tantas cosas que tenemos que ofrecer para todos ustedes. En Ensenada vive una comunidad muy grande de estadounidenses, alrededor de 20,000, y creemos que va a seguir creciendo. Queremos recibirlos bien, que nuestra ciudad sea segura, bonita, agradable, y que nosotros los recibiremos con los brazos abiertos. Muchas gracias, Alex.
Thank you again for this opportunity. We look forward to welcoming you also to Ensenada with open arms so that we can continue this conversation, but also to further strengthen our economic ties, our political ties, our cultural ties. There's not just a lot of people from Mexico coming to live in Los Angeles, but there's now more than 20,000 people who have moved from the United States and are now living in Ensenada. So it really is a two-way relationship, and we look forward to furthering those relationships. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Just by way of introduction, I want to also acknowledge a good friend of the city of Los Angeles, Ruben Smith, an attorney in the private sector who is a mutual friend here, and I want to thank him for organizing this trip.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you to the mayor for being here. All right, we can go to the next order of business, please.
The roll hasn't been called yet.
Okay, can you please call the roll, Madam?
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weisstein, Padilla, 14 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, next order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Smith moves, Mr. Zine seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
All right, Mr. Reyes moves, and Ms. Perry seconds.
On the regular agenda, Mr. President, item number 1 is an item notice for public hearing, and the applicant requests a continuance to December 15th.
Okay, there is no objection to item number 1. That will be continued to December 15th. So ordered.
Item number 2 is a finding of public convenience and necessity in Council District 14. A motion is required to grant the application.
Okay, Mr. Villaraigosa?
Move to approve item 2.
Okay, Mr. Villaraigosa moves item 2, recommendations. Should we vote on that right now, or should we just hold that with consent?
Yes, council can vote on that now.
Okay, let's open the roll on that. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 3 through 24. On item number 3, a new ordinance has been supplied by the city attorney making a technical correction.
The technical correction has been circulated. And what date is on that technical correction? Just want to make sure.
That has today's date on it, I believe.
Okay, as long as it says November 23rd.
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. That's been circulated, so let us take those. Any specials, colleagues? Mr. Reyes?
Yes, item number 14, please.
Okay, number 14 will be called special. Any other specials, colleagues?
Mr. President, just to let council know, on item number 20, that is submitting without recommendation, and a motion is required on that item. It's a Public Works report.
Okay. Ms. Perry, do you have a recommendation on item 20 and CD9? There's no recommendation one way.
Receive and file.
To receive and file, okay. Ms. Perry, let's move to receive and file that. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, let's take the balance of the items. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those items are approved. Next items, please. Yes, Mr. Labange?
11 and 18 forthwith, please.
Okay, let's do 3 as well, forthwith. 11 and 18, too.
Next items, Mr. President, are items for which public hearings have not been held, 25 through 48. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. 47, special, Mr. Padilla. Any other specials, colleagues? Mr. Smith?
Yes, item number 49.
Okay,
And
49.
ask that item number 34 be continued to the first week in January at the request of the department and with the support of the council district.
Okay, there's no objection on 34. That will be continued to then. Mr. Parks and then Mr. Villaraigosa. 33 from Mr. Parks, special, and Mr. Villaraigosa.
Item 37.
37 will be called special too, and Mr. Reyes.
Item 50, please.
Item 50 and Mr. Labange. Item 38, very special day. All right. Anything else, colleagues?
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Yep.
Item number 33 was called special by Mr. Parks, 37 by Councilmember Villaraigosa, 38 by Mr. Labange, 47 by Mr. Padilla, and 49, I'm sorry, was called special by Mr. Smith?
Was that correct, Mr. Smith? 49. 49, Mr. Smith. And we have a card on 47 too. Mr. Reyes?
You can move item number 14 forthwith, please. 15, I'm sorry, 15.
Okay. 15 will also do forthwith. If there's no other specials from this batch, colleagues, let's take up the balance of the items. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Okay, those are approved.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Everything will be forthwith today, colleagues, because of the break, so we'll make sure those all move. Okay.
Okay, the next items, Mr. President, are on the supplemental agenda, 49 and 50, and I believe those items have already been called special by council members. And there are two amending motions that have been distributed on item 49.
Okay.
The next-
Who called 49 special?
That was
Mr.
Mr.
Smith?
Smith.
Mr. Smith, did you want to take up the item to discuss, or just for the amendments that were circulated? Both, okay, so we'll keep that on the table. Okay.
Okay, the next items then would be items for which public hearings have not been held, items 51 through 64. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. Colleagues, any specials? Ms. Hahn.
I would like to continue item 51 and 52 until tomorrow.
Okay. Colleagues, is there any objection to continuing 51 and 52 one day? If not, we'll continue those till tomorrow's meeting. Any other specials, colleagues? Okay. If not, let's take up the balance of those items. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Okay, those are approved as well. All righty.
And then last item is item number 65, and that is an item for which public hearing has not been held also.
Okay.
And there is a substitute motion, thank you,
public
that has
hearing.
been distributed.
Okay. We'll open and close the public hearing for that. And anybody wishing to call it special? If not, let's open the roll on the substitute motion. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
And that is approved. Okay. Next
Going
item.
back to the items called special, item number 14 was called special by Councilmember Reyes.
Okay. Why don't we, with custom that we've been doing, we'll just take public comment first. General public comment. I'd like to call forward at this time for general public comment, Bill Hui, Jade Mansouri, and Cesar Altamirato.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. My name is Bill Hui, and my background is I've hosted 4 radio talk shows and 2 TV shows here in LA since 1981. The last time I spoke before City Council was in 1998 when I worked with Channel 2 exposing the parking meter story where parking meters were cheating people out of parking time and then people were getting millions of dollars of tickets that they shouldn't have received. And to my understanding, it created the biggest public outcry to City Council and the Mayor's office in 1998. Now I'm involved with the Florentine Gardens nightclub in Hollywood, and this is a story that's becoming very well known in the public. And what's happening is there are 2 people that have been working behind the scenes to influence the city of LA to use eminent domain laws to destroy the Florentine Gardens, which is a landmark that's been open since 1938 in Hollywood. In the last 25 years, we've lost many Hollywood landmarks like the Brown Derby, the Canteen, and other clubs, and Schwab's. This is the last nightclub still in business from Hollywood's golden age. Also, that message of destroying Hollywood landmarks is partially responsible for runaway productions, which has cost the city of LA millions of dollars in tax revenues. My point today is 2 points. Number one, the city of LA wants to build a firehouse on that site, which would not be centrally located and would put citizens on the eastern end of Hollywood at risk. Now, what is happening here is the driving force, one of the 2 driving forces influencing the city is a gentleman named Joel Fisher, who's the president of the Hollywood United Citizens Council. And what he's never made public, to the best of my knowledge, is that he does public relations for a competitive nightclub. And in my point of view, that creates a conflict of interest and corrupts the morals of the entire process in the last 2 years. He never made that public. I'm making that public now. Also, Mr. Joel Fisher appointed to the Hollywood United Citizens Council the owner of a nightclub that is right next door to the Florentine Gardens. So now you have two people who work for competitive nightclubs aggressively influencing the city to destroy the Florentine Gardens, which is a landmark. In fact, the LA Times wrote an article about the Florentine Gardens where it was a designated landmark. And this is a disgrace. It sends a bad message to the entertainment industry, to the business community. And the sad part is that the owner is a Latino who came into Hollywood when that area was nothing more than a ghetto, worked hard to clean it up. And instead of the city of LA patting him on the back for creating a prosperous nightclub that has paid millions of dollars in taxes, they want to take his business away from him.
If I could very respectfully ask you to conclude.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
got it.
Okay.
So my point is that I believe it's morally wrong because there's a conflict of interest going on behind the scenes, and it's bad spirit to cut somebody down who's worked so hard and put so much into the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Please.
Wow, tall guy. Good morning, distinguished city council members and council president. It is an honor to live in this culturally diverse city of Los Angeles and a privilege to be here in front of you in person. I am here in favor of the Florentine Gardens and to preserve this historical landmark establishment. And one of the comments that I wanted to point out to you folks is one of our biggest constituents, someone who's in support of us, is the Hollywood Presbyterian Church. Now, a church supporting a nightclub, that shows the diversity of this whole situation we're involved in. And I wanted to point out a little bit of an article or letter that they wrote out, and I have the letter here to submit for you. On September 29, 2004, a letter of support from Hollywood Presbyterian Church was written to whom it may concern regarding this matter. The letter states that the Florentine Gardens has been a superb neighbor for the entire life in the community. The church has a vital part of the community for more than 100 years, and it currently has a congregation of 5,000 members. Regarding the Florentine Gardens, here's what the church powers to be stated on the letter. Their absence from this neighborhood would be a loss for our city. To use the Florentine Gardens for a regional fire station, it is our desire to speak out against this plan. And I do have a copy of this letter to submit for you guys. This is a long cultural heritage of Hollywood. It is an entertainment icon in the city. We need to continue the entertainment commerce into the city of Hollywood. So please reconsider that. Thank
And
you.
you can just give it to the officer. We'll take anything you'd like to submit. Thank you. Or that officer. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Cesar Altamirano. I'm in the entertainment business as a producer for records, movies, and events. But my main concern is it seems like it's a master plan that works here. Some activists want Hollywood to break away from the city of Los Angeles. And one of the borders will be the Hollywood Freeway, and this is why they are trying to have a fire station built at the Florentine Gardens. That is west of the Hollywood Freeway. So when they break away from the city of Los Angeles, they will end up having a state-of-the-art fire station paid by the city of Los Angeles. I hope some people is paying attention here. We're having a public audition, and a lot of people are ignoring this. Sorry I say that. But it seems like no one is paying attention to something that's important for some people that work hard. And there's a new courthouse already there on the same block at the Florentine Gardens. And there's not being used fully because of the city of Los Angeles doesn't have enough funds at this time. Now, it's a lot of money, millions of dollars being spent to do this fire station, buying a lot of different properties that later on they change their mind, and we, the city, we the taxpayers are losing money. So when they break away from the city, they will end up with a new courthouse and a fire station. In other words, they are putting the pieces in place before they make their move. All of this will be at the expenses of the city of Los Angeles and our tax monies. Can you imagine trying to replace a historical landmark for a training facility and a storage? Think about this. You are representatives here in the city. You are our knights. You are to defend us, the business people, the people of Los Angeles, and we are here noticing there is some kind of decisions made in favor of people that are really not valuing a historical place like the Florentine Gardens. That place has been there for 66 years as a club and as a restaurant. Imagine, Hollywood is the entertainment icon in the world. Taking business entertainment away from Hollywood is taking the main attraction from the city. This is the United States of America, built in unity and not in separation. And if we united stand, we will be doing great. But if we are separate, we will fall. And I really, especially you, Mr. Garcetti,
thank you,
will ask you to pay very close attention to this, because it's not just a building, it's not just a business, it's not just the city, but this is one of the few places where minority can be entertained in Hollywood.
Thank you very much.
Thank
we
you,
appreciate
sir.
your comments today, Cesar, and everybody who came. We appreciate them. That was the last public comment speaker, so we will close general public comment for today. Oh, did you? Okay, we didn't have a card, but please, if you want to come forward. And we know your name, but if you'll just state it for the record, please.
Yes, of
Thank
course.
you.
Good morning. My name is Eduardo Blancas. I was an anchorman in Mexico City. I am a field reporter freelance with Channel 34. I'm a writer with newspaper Hoy. On Tuesday, good morning. On Tuesday, October 19, 2004, the Florentine Gardens management attended a luncheon put on by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Mayor Han was the keynote speaker. The topic of the mayor's speech was about saving Hollywood, because people come here from all over the world to visit Hollywood, and that tourism is vital to LA's economy. So how can the mayor be speaking at a public event about saving Hollywood, and at the same time, one city agency wants to destroy the last remaining nightclub from Hollywood's golden age? Please, save the Florentine Gardens. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the testimony today. That closes public comment for today. If we can go back to, I believe item 14 is our first.
Yes, that was called special by Councilmember Reyes.
Okay, Councilmember Reyes, we have item 14 before us, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, on your desk, you should have in front of you 14A. And first, I want to thank the members of the Chinatown community that are here, our commissioners for their hard work, the Housing Committee members for sharing their perspective on this matter. This is one of those situations where everyone that could have bidded for a project did. They were all friends. They're all experienced individuals. But we ran into a situation where we needed to clarify the criteria. We need to clarify the conditions and how this process worked. And just given the level of questioning, I want to make sure we stick to the priority that I was trying to emphasize throughout the process, and that is to get housing built in Chinatown. This particular site had laid vacant for 10 years. So in my substitute motion, what we tried to do is refer the matter back to the CRA board for reconsideration at its next meeting and request that the board reissue the RFP on an accelerated schedule so we don't lose the next round of what's called the TCAC funding. And I'm urging the CRA to revise the RFP to disclose the weight and the scoring criteria to the participants, to consider the factors of multicultural sensitivity and multilingual needs of the Chinatown resident population. we urge the CRA to develop a standard RFP process that includes an appeal process similar to that used by CDD and the Housing Department, again, to eliminate the ambiguity and the lack of consistency. Bottom line, colleagues, I have over 100 units that will soon lose their status as being affordable. They are going to be expiring. Their affordability covenants will go away, which means we'll be losing housing to market rate levels that essentially will put these units out of reach to the majority of people living in the Chinatown area. I have close to 600 units in that status in my district overall. So my sense of urgency is, one, to get this back within the process, two, put the criteria back and keep it transparent and minimize the negative impact on the people who live in Chinatown. So again, I request your vote. We can move this matter and get it back and close this issue and get the housing built. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this item? If not, let's open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
This item is approved. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 33 was called special by Councilmember Parks.
Okay, Mr. Parks, why don't we hold that on the table and go to the... Oh,
The next item then was
let's go to the
item
next one.
37, and that was called special.
Mr. Parks, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Do you want to take up 33? Okay, we'll go to the next one in the meantime.
And 37 was called special by Councilmember Villaraigosa.
Okay, Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes, I just wanted to make a verbal motion for the council to direct the city engineer to revise the project's scope components.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to be heard on item? If not, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, that is approved as amended.
Prepared for number 33.
Okay, we'll take
we got
33.
agreement with Mr. Weiss to have this moved to Budget and Finance because we really need to find out what the cost and where that funding will come for these review of these type of transactions.
Okay.
So we'll ask that that be sent to Budget and Finance.
Okay, that's in concurrence with Mr. Weiss. Any objection? If not, we'll refer that to Budget and Finance. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 38 was called special by Councilmember Labange.
Mr. Labange, item 38.
Thank you. Question was resolved forthwith, please.
Okay, everything's moving smoothly. It's been resolved. Let's open the roll on that. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Next item.
47 was called special by Councilmember Padilla.
Okay, can we hold that on the desk? We'll take that as last item today.
The next item was item number 49, and that was called special by Councilmember Smith, and there are two amending motions that have been distributed to the council members.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a number of issues I want to bring forth. First of all, the committee voted last week on this issue, both the Budget and Finance and Environment Quality, to report back to the council, and that's embodied in part of this motion. Ms. Perry has a motion before you today, I believe it'd be 49A probably, which has a couple structural issue problems. First of all, the day after our committees met, the Board of Public Works met, and the Board of Public Works gave them 45 days to report back on the meet and confer process of best and final offer on the alternatives to Sunshine Canyon. And that's one of the problems with your motion, Ms. Perry. You talk about, in bullet point number 1, an RFP for request for proposal for alternative technologies, and there is no such thing. So I want to clarify what your intent was. Were you talking about the alternatives to Sunshine Canyon, which is a different RFP, or are you talking about the RFQ, which is on alternatives, which is a whole other issue? So which I need... Alternatives? Okay. On the alternative issue, there's an RFQ that's been issued by the Board of Public Works. A consultant, URS, has been hired, and that's a one-year project, a little more than a year. So if you're asking for a report back on alternative technologies, that report will not be available for a year. They're in the process. That was the contract we gave as a city to URS to do. So if you're talking about alternatives, asking for that back in 45 days makes no sense because the department is not ready to make a report of that nature. I have a consultant which we've brought in, which is going to be bringing some policy issues to the council in February on this, and I'd like a little more time to develop that. But on the RFQ alone, that's technically not possible because the report won't be ready for at least a year. If you're talking about the alternatives to Sunshine Canyon, that was an RFP with a different title, and I'll be glad to give you that title if that's what you're really talking about. But again, 45 days is too soon because the Board of Public Works just gave the department 45 days, so we really need at least 60 days to have it back to council. So there's two problems with that. Secondly, on the second and third instructions, we're talking about reporting back, my time's still good? Okay. Reporting back in 30 days for alternative technology. Again, you can't do that because they're not ready to do that. And instruct them again on alternative technologies, assessment and options and mitigations, all that. That's just not technically possible unless we're willing to just void the contract we've given to URS and tell them forget about it and give us your best guess. So I think there's really tremendous structural problems with your motion that just don't make any sense. So I'd ask you, I think the spirit was right, and I support you in reporting back to the two committees in 60 days, if you would, on the alternative to landfilling. And I can give you the technical language for that RFP if that's what you're talking about.
Thank you. Ms. Berry.
Is there anybody here from the department? Have you had a chance to take a look at the motion I introduced?
I was just reading it right now, Councilwoman. Enrique Zaldivar, Assistant Director with the Bureau of Sanitation.
Is it impossible for the board and the Bureau to respond to the whereas in my motion and give me some kind of a response in 45 days?
On the disposal options, Councilwoman, that is the landfill options, 45 days is very tight.
Mm-hmm.
We would have a difficult time. We have 45 days at board to come back within the Board of Public Works. 60 days would be reasonable.
And I wanted it to come back to EQ, and then I want to go through EQ and then, do that, and Mr. Smith can do what he needs to do.
Yes.
Can you make it back? I'd like to come through EQ first, if that's possible. If I say 60 days, I'd like to have it come through there first. Is that possible?
I think that would be the normal path for any item coming out of sanitation, that it go to EQ. That's how I understand it, Councilwoman.
Okay, all right, and I'm not interested at this point in doing a joint meeting at this point, so I want to sit and go through it myself.
Okay.
All right, and that's why I did this.
Okay.
So I'll agree to 60 days.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Mizikowski?
Let's do the whole thing.
I'm sorry, were you finished, Ms. Berry?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Mizikowski is our next
What
speaker.
do you want?
I appreciate Mr. Smith's acknowledgement of a tight schedule, and he's right. I think there are two different things, and Ms. Perry is right to make sure that EQ is looking at this, and Budget and Finance can look at the financial side subsequent. I agree that it probably is policy issue, substantive first, and then budget issue. And I think that the 60 days really refers also to 49B, which was the RFQ, which is the more specific, let's look at a year from now what the alternatives are that they're looking at in that sense. One of the things, though, that I thought in 49A that made sense, and I appreciate that URS has been given a contract and it's going to be a year to look at really substantive what are the other technologies out there. And I would presume that, and perhaps the Bureau can tell us, that in that year, URS isn't just going away and going to come back to us in a year. There are probably some status report updates, some informational things, and it might be useful for Ms. Perry to get, whether it's every 45 days, every 60 days, just a status report on what is going on with their year-long contract. What are they interacting with in terms of the Bureau? What kinds of questions are they asking? What is the Bureau giving them back? So at least not for action items, but to have EQ have an every 45-day status report update on just what's going on with the contract and where it's going would be useful, so that a year from now, everyone isn't just waiting to see whatever this big report's going to be. And I mean, we may all, the rest of us may wait for that long time, but I think EQ should probably have a more regular, updated status report, probably consistent with what the board is going to be getting.
In fact, Councilmember, if I may clarify on the alternative technologies, which is non-landfilling options, we do envision having a report in early 2005. In fact, I wanted to clarify that with Councilmember Smith, that the report will be available in early 2005. The evaluation report of alternative technologies.
Well, okay, then as I say, as there are elements or milestones in the URS study as opposed to the final one-year contract, then that is what I think is appropriately to be sent to EQ as those milestones come about, just so that they can have that update as well. And I think it would be useful for the whole council to just know what the markers are and what direction it's heading along the way, rather than waiting for a final end report. So I think amending the motion to allow that, the status report updates to EQ, makes sense.
Thank you, Ms. Miskowski. Mr. Smith?
I think Ms. Miskowski clarified the issues I was going to do, but I ran out of time. And that is, I have no problem with that reporting back. I think it'll be very educational for the committee to understand what's going on, and will certainly change your mind, as it has changed most of us who's been involved in it, when you see the reality of what's out there. So I encourage you to make those reports back and include Ms. Perry's staff in those kind of decision-making that are going on, because it will be enlightening to all of you when you see it when it comes out. So I'm glad to see that you're willing to do that and that we can give you the 60 days needed on the other report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Mr. Parks?
One thing I just like to, I think it is important that environmental committee looks at it, but one of the things that we emphasize at our committee, that we absolutely need to know if there's any intended cost in next year's budget, that we find out that as quickly as possible for 0506, and if there's going to be subsequent costs down the road, that we need to have some idea of not only the cost, but where those funds are coming from. So those are still in those instructions that came out of Budget and Finance. That need is still there for the reporting, so that we can make planning for the budget process in the future.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Any other members wishing to be heard on this?
Excuse me, Mr. President, just a clarification on the amending motion, 49A. Then rather than 45 days, that would be 60 days, and also on the second bullet point would also be 60 days?
Is that correct, Ms. Perry? Okay, I can't hear anything, but otherwise I'll assume that's good. That clarification is correct. Okay, if we can open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved as amended. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 50 was called special, and I believe that was by Mr. Reyes.
Okay, Mr. Reyes, item 50.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, I called item 50 special, only that I wanted to share with my colleagues that there are many facilities that are being built right now throughout the city. They're air treatment facilities. And this has to do with how we're going to be paying our sewer fees. And so the message I wanted to give is that I want to continue working with the department. I think they've done a great job in responding to how these facilities can look. Unfortunately, we had to go through a process in which I was questioning whether we should build these long tubular type structures that had this industrial feel. And I wanted to look at how we can make them more compatible with the river area. I wanted to make them so that they can be used as an economic development tool by making an area look more pleasant, friendlier, softer, more natural. And I'm very grateful that they were able to reach that level of adjustment, and they're working hard to make those changes. But I also want to send a clear message that everyone in the city will be impacted by these sewer fee changes. And as such, I believe every project and every part of the city should get equal benefit in how we improve this infrastructure. So as we move forward, let's keep in focus that we're trying to create facilities that have the opportunity to create green space, have the opportunity to enhance habitats that can have multiple benefits, not only for the ecology and the environment, but also to stimulate issues of compatibility and improvement in areas that have long been forgotten and or neglected over the decades. So I know several air treatment facilities are being suggested throughout this corridor. I believe there's some in Councilmember Ludlow's district. I believe there's some in Council District 14, Councilmember Villaraigosa's. So I just want to amplify this in the spirit of equity, in the spirit of having a common playing field. Again, let's continue working with our hardworking staff in Public Works. Let's continue developing those options and alternatives that are truly reflective of stimulating these natural habitats while meeting the objectives of being, taking away our contaminants, lowering the odors and the fumes, while meeting our objectives and cleaning our waterways. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Villaraigosa.
Just very quickly, let me just add my voice to that of Mr. Reyes. As we address this settlement agreement, I stand with him for the idea that we've got to ensure that the community mitigation that's necessary to ensure that some of our communities aren't shortchanged needs to be vindicated here. And I stand with him under the idea that we still need some more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villaraigosa. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? If not, let us open the roll on the item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That item is approved. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 65 was called special, and that has, that has a substitute motion that has already been adopted. Where item 47 is still on the desk, and there is a special one motion that was introduced by
Mr. Parks.
Councilmember Garcetti and Parks.
Did you want to speak on 65 or?
65 just forthwith,
Okay.
and then I'd like to see if we get a reconsideration. 61, just like to make a verbal pitch for
Okay.
the reward
Let's
motion.
vote on 65, please. First, if we can open the roll on that. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Let's open the roll on reconsideration of 61. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Parks, you have a verbal amendment on 61? On 61? We have
61, like
before us, yeah.
reconsideration, just to make a public appeal.
We've reconsidered
on-
it and it's before us, so
Okay.
whatever you'd like to add to it.
I would just like to make the public aware that on our last meeting, Mrs. Singleton came to the council, made a personal plea for the community to assist in finding the murderer of her son, Stephen Austin Singleton, who was standing at the corner of 4610 South St. Andrews, where he was approached by several suspects that shot him down without provocation. The city is going forward in support of Ms. Singleton with a $50,000 reward. We ask anyone with information regarding this to contact 77th Detectives.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. All right, with those changes, if we can open the roll again, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you, that item is approved. Okay, we have a special one before us. If we can hear from the city attorney on the findings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the posting of today's agenda, city staff has learned that the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and the city's administrative code require council to give the CDD authority to execute the extension of the Federal Empowerment Zone Agreement before December 1st. Immediate action is required for council to act before then. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Okay, on the findings, we can open the roll, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, that item is before us. Anybody wishing to be heard? If not, let's open the roll on the item, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. And like all items, that'll go forthwith. Okay, we have just item 47 left, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from the city attorney, I believe as a personnel matter, we're going to go into closed session on this item.
Well, actually, only if the discussion involves consideration of a particular employee. Otherwise, the rest of the discussion has to be an open session.
Okay, Mr. Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think to expand on what the city attorney said, colleagues, this is the moment a lot of people have been waiting for. Not so much Mr. Deaton's departure from the CLA's office, but a discussion of what the heck we're going to do, and who's going to take his place, and what comes next, and what's the process that we're going to utilize to get there. So as the city attorney has said, we definitely begin this conversation in open session, and should do so as long as we're talking about process, as long as we're talking in general. But the second that we begin to banty about specific names of potential candidates, either on a permanent or a temporary basis, that's when we cross the threshold into getting involved with personnel matters, and it would be appropriate at that point in time to enter into closed session. Colleagues, as you all have read my letter that I distributed to you all, we wanted to agendize this today to begin the discussion of how we are going to go about the search and selection for our next CLA. And I do so today to begin a conversation. Number one, I don't think we're going to decide upon anything today. It was agendized as discussion only, not for specific action, for a couple of reasons. Number one, certainly I don't think we're ready on to find a permanent replacement yet, and even on a temporary basis. And third of all, Mr. Deaton still hasn't even been confirmed to go to the Department of Water and Power. So today begins a conversation about this. By way of announcement, if you haven't seen the special agenda or the regular agenda for tomorrow, the matter of Mr. Deaton's confirmation to the Department of Water and Power General Manager position is on the agenda for tomorrow on the special agenda. But for today, I hope what serves as a framework for our thinking, what serves as a framework for our discussion, is the letter that was circulated about a week and a half ago that outlines sort of 3 recommendations that I have. Not locking us into specifics, but the 3 steps that I've proposed is that we think about what acting or interim scenario is going to be for us, because I don't think we're going to have, again, that permanent replacement before Mr. Deaton's departure to the Department of Water and Power. So we should give some thought as to what and who we want in that interim or temporary position while we conduct a thoughtful search and selection process. Second, while we have that acting or interim person, I think they can be of help and assistance to us in the selection of a firm that can assist us in the selection and search process. And I would certainly welcome any recommendations you have. I think we all have had over the years experience in search and selection processes, and if there's a particular firm that you think can be helpful, if there are certain firms that stand out in your mind, then we should give them that due consideration. And then ultimately, we don't know how many resumes we're going to get. We don't know how many people are going to be interested in this position. It could be a small number, and it could be very easy, if that's the case, for all 15 members to be actively involved in the ultimate selection of the person. But it may be a large number, and we're going to need some way to whittle down, potentially 100 applications down to a handful that's more manageable for a body of this size. Ultimately, in preparation for this discussion and this process, we've done a little homework. My office has been talking to the CLA's office, the city clerk's office, the city attorney's office, the personnel department to get everybody's input as to what our options are, what we have to do, what we can't do. And both the charter and the code are pretty silent in all this. The only thing that we know is that a permanent CLA is appointed by 10 votes of the city council. So it takes a 2/3 vote to confirm somebody on a permanent basis. Other than that, it's pretty silent. There are no rules or restrictions when it comes to interim. So when all else fails, 8 votes of the council carries the day, and we feel comfortable that that's the basis for selecting an acting or an interim. In the short term, and it isn't if Mr. Deaton is confirmed tomorrow, then the executive officer of the CLA's office becomes the acting CLA until this body either reaffirms that or chooses differently. And again, we're going through this search and selection process. So that's pretty much it as it comes to what the code says, what the charter says, and it's up to this council as a body to make these critical decisions. I have further thoughts, but I know my time is running significantly, and many of you also want to share some thoughts and suggestions. So I'll end now, but push my button again to speak in a couple minutes.
Okay, we have a couple other speakers. I did neglect one public speaker card, which I'd like to take at this time for public comment on this. Candido, if you'd like to step to the microphone.
Thank you, President. Council members, In regards to a replacement for the CLA's office, Mr. Deaton was a wonderful and CLA. He did a great job, but we all know the answer to who should be in this position. I was sorry to hear that Councilwoman Miskowski has decided not to consider this position, but Councilwoman Miskowski, I'm not here to embarrass you, but I have stood there for 13 years, not because I want to be friends with anyone, but because I want to see good government. And from you, Councilwoman Miskowski, I've seen great government. Mr. LeBons always refers to you as good government. I refer to you as great government, and I think the city of Los Angeles would benefit by you, please, by reconsidering and taking, hopefully, that position in the CLA's office. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Candido. That closes public comment for this. And next speaker is Mr. Weiss, to be followed by Mr. Reyes and Ms. Miskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the Council President for his leadership on this and for ensuring that we have an initial discussion today. We're having a discussion about having a discussion about how to have a discussion. I mean, that's kind of what we're beginning a process today. And thank you for doing that, Mr. Padilla. I appreciated what you said a few moments ago when you talked about how important it is that we make this a public discussion and a public process. And I think all of us are sensitive to the certain particular things that you pointed to that would warrant going into a closed session discussion, such as banning about actual names, I think was the way you put it. But I don't think anyone wants to do any bandying today. We want to just sort of, get our feet wet, as it were, with this discussion. And I think that's important, and I think it's valuable. One thing I just wanted to bring to the attention of other members is a motion that we discussed extensively that Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Garcetti, and I co-presented a short time ago that has to do with this issue, and I think it'd be really a very useful, valuable thing for all of us to do, to have a meeting. We could schedule it, for example, on a non-council day, Thursday afternoon or a Thursday morning, when we could hear from a district day, or we could do it Monday, but just a day when when we don't have to worry about the clutter of the ordinary council agenda, when we could have experts, academics, people from the legislative office in Sacramento, someone from the county's administrative office, people who are experts such as Ms. Hahn and Mr. Zine in the charter, come in and talk about the different possibilities for the job. What has the job been in the past? What are the different things it could be in the future? So we could get a handle on what is the job description. Because the first thing you do when you do an executive search, it's not that you hire the executive search firm, it's that you come up with what is the consensus about what is the job description. And all of us in the last couple of years have probably come up with different ideas. Ms. Hahn probably has some ideas. I have some ideas. And I think we'd benefit from hearing from experts about what are the different ideas that could be on the table for a job description, so that when we go forward with the most progressive and most all-inclusive job description we could have. And if we have that discussion in public, it's sort of like a mini charter reform session in a sense. I think we'd all, those of us who weren't on the Charter Commission, as well as those of you who were, would learn a lot about what are the possibilities of this job. And so I would just bring that motion to your attention. I think it'd be a very good discussion to have, and I think it would be an especially good discussion to have in public, as we're having this discussion in public today.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Perfectly timed. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Councilmember Weiss, Councilmember Padilla, on this effort. But I stand here wondering, how are we going to show the CLA staff how much we appreciate their work, their role in this institution over the many, many, many years that has allowed the council to maintain its effective role? And it happened because we have many experienced, talented people in the CLA staff today. And so the message I don't want to give to the staff is that we are not cognizant or aware of their many, many hours of working in the wee hours of the night to make sure the reports get in, knowing that they have a strong relationship with many of the key figures and all the departments in the city, that they have defended this institution as a council when we had to negotiate with the executive office, we had to negotiate with the city clerk, the controller, and all the other entities throughout the jurisdictions. The CLA has played a significant role. My bias comes from the fact that that was one of my first jobs out of graduate school. I sat there with the CLA staff. I saw the level of expertise, the analysis, the objectivity, the awareness for all of the work that has happened throughout these decades, the familiarity with key people in the state and the federal government that has allowed us to move very progressive, very healthy, environmentally friendly, fiscally sound motions, ordinances. They have given us all this advice. And I just feel awkward that we are moving in a direction that seems to say that did not exist. So what are we really doing here? I applaud the council president for going to the CLA staff this past week, this past Monday, to talk about how much we appreciate their work. But we need to take it to another level and create that place that they deservedly should be recognized for, given their hard work and given how they protected this institution we call the City Council. So I just want to be emphatic about that. I understand in term limits sometimes we get a whole new level or different perspective, a new way of looking at things, which I appreciate, but let's not do it in a manner in which we're slapping the faces of those who have worked so hard.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, and I know we all very much appreciate all the work of the CLA staff tremendously. Ms. Misikowski is our next speaker. Then we have Ms. Perry, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Padilla, and Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree wholeheartedly with what Mr. Reyes has said. And members, I think part of the unsettledness that some may be aware of in terms of the staff has been, and I know that the motion wasn't meant to be creating a concern, but the motion did. And the reason why it did, again, if you know this institution for at least 40 years that I've been aware of it, the council in the previous selections of the CLA has never put in a motion like this. The council in its selection of the CLA looked to the CLA's office to know what that institution was, to know how the people filled the job, and looked to that office to refill the office. There's not been, at least from the time that I've been able to research back and have some knowledge of contemporary time, anything different from that. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but it does mean that it raises questions. And it may be healthy to look at what we want. I mean, if you look at the administrative code, which defines it, it's going to be a few words, a few pages, that I think if we all read it, we wouldn't think that defines what the CLA's office is or what the CLA's office does. So my thought in following up on the letter that Mr. Padilla put forward is to take it the next step. And that is, as he's describing a process of a selection of a search firm, let's ask our personnel department, who have they used? Give us the 2 or 3 search firms. That doesn't mean that it's limited to just that, but who have those search firms? Generally, our department goes back to some ones who've achieved success and help us find some of the leaders today who are our general managers. Let's look to them, maybe have a group of 2 or 3 to be vetted by the council, discussed by the council, so that we can go that route if we choose. I know that we're all also spreading the word and people are talking in the outside community. My prejudice, and I think it's interesting, I would say that probably those in and around the building who've been here for a long time is going to be prejudice from someone who knows this institution, knows this city, knows how these institutions interrelate. There are former CLA people who I think we should talk to. There are former people who were in the CLA's office who didn't achieve number 1, but were number 2 and 3 and left and might be reasonably good candidates. Former people, in fact, our CLA has had people who've been in and out of the CAO's office, so there have been some changes there. But members, I think the most important thing we can say is how important that office is and the people who fill it, not necessarily at the top, but through its depth and breadth. But for a strong CLA's office, we may have had budgets put forward by the mayor and a much stronger growth of the CAO's office, and no disrespect to Mr. Fujioka, but the CLA office has been the city's arm of looking at what we need, how we need, based on the information that comes from the CAO. And in long-term past, the CAO was seen as the arm of the mayor, although working for the entire city, the CLA was seen as the arm of the city council. So the city council is made strong, and it needs to be made strong by the institution of the city legislative analyst office, and who fills not only the number one role, but all of the roles in support. When we have seen, and I will tell you that we've seen more often lately CLA, CAO reports together, and that helps us set a course. That was not as common in the past because there were differences of opinion. It was healthy to have differences of opinion. It's healthy when they're together because I think it helps to set a course. In any case, I think what I'm basically speaking to is, one, let's look at taking the next step to get a search firm here to help meet with each of us and put something forward in terms of how we should guide it. And I'm going to suggest that Mr. Padilla ask each of us by letter to perhaps write to him, collectively shared with all of us, about what we think that CLA should be. We can do it by way of these kinds of discussions, but I think he's asked us in the past, and I know John Ferraro asked us in the past, what did we think the important goals for the city should be? How should we set that by way of our committee structure? What should we be doing in that long term? Similarly, we should be each thinking and submitting something to the President of the Council to be shared with all of us about what we think of this office and how we think this office can better serve the city, can better serve the City Council, and then best embody what we would look for as we want someone to fill that role.
Councilmember Perry.
Thank you very much, and I am also looking forward to a very critical discussion and review of the situation. And I think that I will be joining Mr. Reyes in being a voice for putting everything out on the table, but making sure that we maintain an office that respects the fact that that office operates to our benefit, that the office is an independent office, that the CLA is an independent person. I'll be looking very closely at any efforts to change the model of management. I'm not interested in a situation where a CLA would be directed and told what to do by committee chairs. The strength of the CLA's office is in the CLA's independence and the ability of the CLA and the CAO to be able to speak to us in a forthright manner, to be able to give us an objective analysis even when they disagree, and then ultimately we're the ones who cast the vote and vote something up or vote something down and either suffer the consequences or enjoy the benefits from that. But what we need to protect is the integrity of this office. There may be some issues we need to look at because technology has changed, demographics have changed, needs have changed. There's new federal funding programs that we may need to consider or to be more creative and flexible. But I think we need to be very, very cautious about rewriting the office and rewriting reporting requirements and lines of hierarchy. I think that would be a very dangerous practice on which to embark. And I will be fighting very hard to maintain the integrity of that position, and I hope that we get a strong field of candidates.
Councilmember Cardenas.
One thing that I'd like to point out, the first thing I'd like to point out is that we are in fact in a new era. I think this is the first opportunity that a term-limited city council is going to be involved in selecting a CLA. I have not had the opportunity to be involved in city government or politics at the core like I do now as a councilman for more than a year and a half. But prior members of the council were on the council 7 years, 15 years, upwards of 20 plus years when the council decided who they were going to go with and entrust to be the CLA. That is no longer the case. I'd like to thank Council President Padilla, who's also a term-limited council member, for bringing this process a little bit closer to the people and in front of the cameras, because I think it's very important that we have these kinds of discussions so that we can all understand as a city, not just as a council, what the CLA's responsibility is. The fact of the matter is the CLA's position has a lot of responsibility and a lot of ability. They have a lot of staff members, very important staff members to the city of Los Angeles, because many times it is the CLA staff that actually makes recommendations to the council and to the committees and actually sets policy in motion. And I'm being careful about saying setting policy in motion, because let me give you an example of something that just occurred recently. And I want to remind everybody, including the public, the CLA is not an elected position. So with all due respect from my vantage point, the CLA is not a policy maker. The CLA is not a maker of motions. The CLA is not an implementer of making motions for the city of Los Angeles for its present or its future. What the CLA does in fact do is analysis. The CLA actually does work on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, but is the elected officials that actually set policy and make policy for the city of Los Angeles. For example, in the ad hoc committee on business tax reform just recently, there was a moment in time in that committee where it was very important that I, the chairman of the committee, recognized what our staff was telling us over and over and over when there was a level of frustration about making progress on such an important issue. It was the CLA, the CAO, the Office of Finance, the city attorney's staff that were telling us, tell us what you want us to put on the table for you to make policy with. In other words, they were making it abundantly clear to us elected officials, our job is to provide you with information, and your job is to tell us what information you want us to analyze, what information you want us to dissect, what information you want us to go retrieve, what information you want before you so that you can make a decision. Why is this example so important to this discussion of who our CLA is going to be? I think it's very important because I, before becoming a council member, was an elected official at the legislative level of the state of California. And at that level of government, the amount of responsibility that CLA had was in a different vein than it is here on the city council, on the city level here. And I think that we need to make sure that we're cognizant of the balance of the fact that we have term-limited members of council who are elected officials making policy, and we have a non-term limited CLA position that very likely, whoever becomes our next CLA, very likely will live out the timeline that those members on the council today will be on the council. So I think it's very important that we understand that we need to be cognizant of what we're doing, and the fact of the matter, this decision is very important, and it's something that we need to take a lot of things into account, not just whether or not we're comfortable with someone, not just whether or not that someone may or may not fit well in the previous way in which we did business in the city, but we are a changing city, and we're changing the way we make laws in the city, the way we pass motions and set the tone, and what is legal or illegal in the city of Los Angeles, and what we are or not going to do in the city of Los Angeles. So I think it is very relevant and poignant that the President of the Council and other members of the Council had made sure that we have this discussion and we continue discussion on the floor of this Council.
Councilman Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to comment that I appreciate we're getting this open discussion, but one of the things I hope that as we go forward, and even with the discussion about what's new and where we're going in the future, the one item I think you can't afford to lose is the objectivity of the position. Having observed the position as a general manager, having observed it from a council member seat, I don't think that this council could survive if you don't have a person that has an objective opinion and feels certain that it is not against their future to express their objective opinion. Because there's many times in which we can find in this city, as we've gone over the last 30 years, as we've taken general managers out of civil service, we no longer get all those objective opinions that we used to get. As we've moved and changed what people believe was for the better, we're finding less and less of that objective opinions. As council members are term limited, you'll find over time that lack of objective opinions will continue to erode in the city of Los Angeles. And it reminds me of a question I asked Zev Yaroslavsky when he first left the city council and went over to the board of supervisors. And I asked him what was the most significant difference in the two jobs. He said in the city of LA with general managers in civil service, although it drove him crazy, they were objective and honest, and they told their opinion, and they made you overrule them if you chose to. When he went to the Board of Supervisors, it was clear that everyone that came forward said, my opinion is wherever 3 votes are. And you don't always get the best opinions when people believe that they are trying to serve the majority as opposed to giving you the most significant information. And just as Mr. Cardenas mentioned about business tax, yes, we are in a job of creating policy, but if we don't have the right information, we're going to make wrong policy. So I would hope that as we go forward, that we look at certainly an interim, that we not rush to fill that position, but I'd ask that we not create an interim that may be competing for the job, which gives a clear impression to those outside that it's a done deal already. But that if we're going to recreate the job, that appears to be step one, or what the job should be, before we even think about going out and looking for a candidate or a firm, because it would appear that we would select a firm that would then be most able to then create a candidate pool for the new requirements if they're going to be new. So I would hope that objectivity and also the strength of being in the position and not fear for the job is absolutely essential in that position.
Councilmember Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues, for the discussion. Let me state at the beginning that, as I did in the chair, that the work of the CLA's office is not only critical, it is our work here. I see it as one and the same, that we cannot do any of the things that we do district-specific or policy-specific without the work. I personally appreciate Ivania and Paul and Adrian, knowing that Sharon is up, night after night around budget time. The sacrifice nobody would question. I'm one of the few people who probably reads a Vox, weekly digest of state and national issues that comes around. The CLA's office does an extraordinary job. But there are ways that we can also discuss, and I know that's not what is before us today, enhancing the office, not taking away, enhancing the office, adding capability, because right now we give the folks that are there plenty to work on. They work as hard as anybody here in City Hall. And I think that's a healthy discussion to have about any body. We did it about ourselves when we reordered our committee structure. We do it about city government when we considered a new charter. Those conversations and that airing out is a good thing for democracy. It's a good thing for an institution. As we look at who will replace Ron Deaton, and Ron Deaton has been an extraordinary CLA here, one that will be very dearly missed, not because he's the 16th council member, but because he has furthered our goals and helped us get the things done that we need. There's not a person around this horseshoe who doesn't have a park or a senior center, a gymnasium, the things that really give us, in a micro sense, success has been done because of him and his staff, but also on the macro sense when we have larger battles and we need one person to negotiate, whether it's with a businessman or woman or whether it's with the mayor in the past or the present, we are able to have that. But I think the discussion, we need to not be defensive. We need to not necessarily just embrace what exists today as the only way we can look at things. I can certainly lay my cards out that I'm not out to reduce the CLA's office, but maybe we can look at ways to add to help those who are there and to look at the roles that we fulfill. Some of the nice things that you see sometimes in other legislative bodies is the ability to have different parts of an analyst's office do different things. When we've looked at the grant making, for instance, and now the CAO's office has that, and CAO's office works oftentimes hand in glove with the CLA's office, but we were looking at certain statistics in which we are falling short on our abilities for our department to get as many of the grants that are out there, whether it's from nonprofits, whether it's for government entities. I think comes tomorrow before us that we finally will have that grant office in the CAO's office. But things like that, those sorts of discussions and that airing out and that looking at what the role should be is critical for us. I want to thank Council President Padilla for the questions that he has put forward in the process, because I think it's been a very good process. The toughest question before us right now is what we're going to do in the interim, and I think we're going to turn to that shortly. But I want to thank Mr. Weiss, I know Ms. Gruhl's not here too, for having the courage to begin a conversation and not retreating immediately once the mouths are open. If we do that, we can't talk about anything around here. We can't get anything done, and I think that will be a critical moment. As I think Mr. Weiss has said, this is something that will last for many years beyond us. This is kind of our Supreme Court appointment, if you will. But we can also look at or maybe it was Mr. Padilla that said it, I don't know, one of the two. But in looking at this too, we not only, it's not just the Supreme Court, because that's something that's written into stone. It's also looking at how we design what makes us work best. And as government has changed, as term limits have come in, as other things have happened, we have to be as nimble as we can be. And that's why this is an important discussion to have. Thank you.
Council President Padilla.
Yes, for a second time. Thank you, Mr. Zine. And colleagues, I hope this is helpful. We're beginning to share collectively what I think a lot of people have been sharing with each other, and certainly with me individually. First, to also respond to Councilmember Weiss's remarks, particularly in regards to his motion, which I'm supportive of. I think it's a good exercise for us to go through. I know it's given a lot of people pause, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't, because this isn't a decision that we're asked to make every day. This isn't a decision that we're asked to contemplate every single day. The decision of appointing the next chief legislative analyst doesn't come around but once in every long while. I think Ron's been in the position officially for about 12 years, and I'm not aware of the tenure of the previous CLAs, but needless to say, whoever becomes the next CLA, if history is any indicator, as Mr. Cardenas said, is going to be here well beyond us. So when I have described to others that this decision is like us appointing our Supreme Court justice, it's because whoever he or she is, in all likelihood, will be here longer than the members around this horseshoe. So it's not just the decision of who's in our best interest, but really who's in the city's best interest, because their style, their experience, their caliber is going to dictate how business is done in this building for the next political generation. And the reason I think, going back to Mr. Weiss's motion, that this exercise is appropriate, and maybe it hasn't happened before, but the reality is that we are in a very different political environment these days. Term limits, more than anything else, has changed the dynamics and the environment, the climate around here, if you will. And so we do have today a city council where Ms. Misikowski is our senior member. But unfortunately, and we don't see any changes in the laws anytime soon, she's going to be gone. So come next July 1st, I think I'm the next senior member here, and I'll have a whole 6 years under my belt. You know, in the old days, 6 years, you were just getting started. And the balance of the council, with 4 years and 2 years under their belt respectively, one new member. So this is a different day, a different political environment, different political structures, and I think it is worthy of reflecting upon what type of CLA we want. Colleagues, if you all recall, the day the news came out, when Mr. Deaton had been offered this position by the mayor, even before the Department of Water and Power commissioners voted on it, I called everybody and said, this is what I'm wanting you to think about. A lot of people were rushing to names. Who was in the mix, who wasn't in the mix? Was it going to be rigged for somebody? And I said, let's just take a time out, take a deep breath, and contemplate what kind of CLA we want. And we're continuing that process. I've asked you guys for input individually and privately. When the letter went out advising of the discussion agendized for today, I asked you for that formally in that letter, and I'm asking you guys again for that today. Continue to provide me that input on all elements of this process because I need your help. It's only going to be via a strong consensus of this council that we select a permanent CLA. Finally, in terms of some specific questions, because people, I think, understand the framework, and I'm not hearing any resistance or objection to the framework that I put forth, but to flesh out the framework on the acting or interim, for example, an important policy decision that we'll have to make sooner rather than later. Does this council as a body want to have an acting or an interim CLA who is competing for the permanent position or not? I can argue both sides. It's a policy decision that we as a body have to make, and that's, for example, something specific we need to think about and resolve in the upcoming weeks. Second, people have talked about a search firm. It's one thing to decide whether we need one or not. Again, I'm not hearing any objection to the use of an outside firm to help us in this process, but that doesn't mean that we've defined the scope. Some people argue it should come from within the city family. the next CLA. Some people argue we should broaden it to, look at the county, maybe even the state, and some are arguing a broad national search. There's upsides and downsides to both. It's only going to be through a consensus of this council that we make those decisions and move forward. So in terms of outcomes for today, because some people are wondering, okay, what are we trying to decide here? Again, what we agendized was nothing more than a discussion. I think this discussion has been helpful because it's getting people talking to each other more maybe than what's happened in the last couple of weeks. I do also want to take a moment, and Mr. Reyes reminded me to stop and thank the CLA's office for their hard work over the years. They do a tremendous job. When we go through this exercise of how does the county do it, how does the state do it, how do other people do it, that shouldn't be interpreted as a vote of or gesture of no confidence. If anything, it's a reflection of this young and maturing group of council members wanting the best for the city of Los Angeles and challenging ourselves to think about what else is out there. Maybe thinking outside the box, there's a way to improve upon a good system that we have in place. But at the end of the day, it's the people around this horseshoe who are the elected officials, who are the ones that the public holds accountable. And it's a lot that we have to weigh out, both on a policy basis, a political basis, and here today on a governance basis. So I look forward to an ongoing discussion. I know there's a couple other speakers still queued up to express themselves, but I have a feeling that we'll continue this in a very specific fashion tomorrow when we consider Mr. Deaton's appointment, and soon thereafter, upon a return from Indianapolis, we'll be having some of these short-term decisions to make before us. Thank you.
Councilman Weiss. Your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate that, Mr. Padilla. I really appreciate what you said and what Mr. Garcetti said. And I want to echo and second the remarks. Where'd he go? Mr. Reyes. He usually sits over here. What Mr. Reyes said, and then what Ms. Perry said. I agree wholeheartedly with what those folks said about the great work of the great staff of the CLA's office. And the extraordinary efforts that they have gone to, not just for me personally as a council member, but for every council member and for the institution of the council. I am very, very supportive of them, have been, and intend to continue to be in the future. As my wife often says, this is not about you. This is about something else entirely. This is about what is the vision that we all share. What vision can we decide that we share as to what the purpose of that institution is in the future? And I think that's a good exercise to go through, and I think it's very important that we go through that in public. One of the things that gives me the most confidence about what we've done this morning is that I know when Mr. Padilla, when you were thinking about how are we going to schedule this discussion on the 23rd, there was some view, will this be a closed session discussion, will it be an open session discussion? We've had this discussion in open session. That's very good because, as Ms. Gruhl has pointed out on numerous occasions, that sends a signal to people who might be interested in this position that it's something that they should take seriously, because we want more good resumes rather than fewer good resumes. We want more outstanding individuals rather than fewer outstanding individuals. We want individuals from more backgrounds rather than fewer backgrounds, so that we can make a decision that's in the best interest of ourselves, in the best interest of ourselves as a collective council, and in the best interest of future councils who will be here long after any of us are, and leave them and the institution in good shape. So I really appreciate what everyone said. I want to particularly thank Mr. Padilla for his support, for having that sort of visioning exercise, and want to again thank Ms. Perry and Mr. Reyes for what they said about the CLA staff. They're absolutely correct, and I couldn't agree more.
Councilmember Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, we have close to, I believe, 40 departments. 40 departments. When we put together an ordinance, how we implement is based on understanding the reality checks. That's what the CLA has done for us. They've told us, this is the budget, this is the capacity, this is how we move, and they give us that reality check. It is not politicized. It doesn't come from a point of view that reflects an interest group. That has been the basis by which many of us have been able to accomplish the various objectives and goals we've had, not only for our districts, but for the city as a whole, because we did not politicize that function. That particular body of information was not influenced by a stakeholder that was able to dominate the politics at that time. My fear is that we can start going down this slippery slope in this process, because now it's about the issue of control. Who's going to control which resource? Who's going to go first? All of these issues that are intricate when we are taxing our departments to reach our objectives and our ordinances. And a very clear example has been, for me, the planning department. We all have various ordinances, we have demands, we want products, but yet we don't staff them. We don't give them the budget to hire people. The same thing with the LAPD. We have these hot spots. Chief Brandon's moving everybody around to different places to address certain issues, but can't cover everything at the same time. These are the reality checks we need that cannot be politicized. These are objective analysis based on the capacity of that budget, the personnel in that department that can give us the insight that says this is real and this isn't. It should not be fodder for headlines. It shouldn't be ways in which we get publicity. It should be about how we implement our projects, our programs, and we should not let this body become politicized.
Mr. Garcetti, for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Zion.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Ms. Perry. It was switched. I'm sorry, it was switched.
Thank you. It's easy to see why you could confuse the two last names. Yes. And I'm at peace with it. And I wanted to say, Mr. Weiss, I think for Ed and myself, I've been here since 1990 in various positions, and I know it's not about me. I never thought it was. You know that? I mean, I'm not that taken with myself. No, actually, it's not. Actually, it's about protecting the integrity of information given to the public so that they can hold us accountable for the decisions that we make. And if there's one beacon, there's one island in this building, if there's one safe place to go in this building as a council member, it has been and always should be the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst, run by an individual who should not live in fear, not be politicized, not be directed or threatened or intimidated or told to withhold information or told when to release information or told where to get information. And so I think for myself and I think for Mr. Reyes, I suspect we're on a similar track, which is I enjoy the critical dialogue. I think it's very, very important to have it in public and have it on the record. And yes, there may be many ways in which we can look at how this job can be done better, how this job can become more relevant. But a special note about the staff, you know, this is not myself or Mr. Reyes just talking about staff because we've been in this building forever. It's because we have a body of people who have a significant expertise in areas that are critical to us in doing our jobs and doing our jobs effectively, especially now because we have term limits. We don't have very much time to do what we need to get done anymore. If we don't have our project started by 2007, for those of us who are termed out in 2009, they won't get done. It's as simple as that. So the CLA, the CAO, those kinds of offices, especially the CLA, will be the continuity, will be the institutional memory, will be the repository of true and accurate and factual information for the consumption of the elected officials as well as the residents of the city of Los Angeles. And then that's why I said what I said, as it is not about me, it is about making sure that we protect the integrity of the office.
Mr. Garcetti, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms. Perry, again, for those words, which I wholeheartedly agree with as well. I would like to move that we, since there's an individual name or two that I think we need to discuss for interim, that we go into closed session to have that discussion. No.
So we take a vote on the closed session. Mr. City Attorney, you recommend that?
It's up to council to vote on whether to go into closed session. If council is going to be mentioning individual names, then yes, it should be in closed session.
All right, so let's vote on going into closed session on this item. Open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
We're going to go into closed session. So, sergeants, please clear the room. And all staff should remove themselves at this time as we go into closed session on this matter. Councilman Sikowski?
May I suggest that it really be literally all staff this time?
Well, everyone will be cleared except the council.
Normally, we have each had a staff member, but I
Right.
think if we're going to be talking about personnel, that this should be literally just the 15 members of the city council, other than our clerk staff, which I think has to be here.
Yes, I agree. So all staff will remove, all staff,
I think it's got to be all, yeah. I think so.
and report.
Welcome back into open session. Madam Clerk, next item before us, please.
Next item before council, there are motions for posting and referral.
Motion shall be posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Garcetti requests to be excused December 10th to leave at 12:15 for city business that meets council policy.
Mr. Garcetti is excused.
Councilmember Ludlow requests to be excused Wednesday, November 24th to leave at 11 a.m. for city business that also meets council policy.
Excuses granted.
And that clears the desk.
Okay, before going to announcements, if it wasn't announced earlier, members, all items approved today shall go forthwith. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a council meeting tomorrow. Thursday is the Thanksgiving holiday, and the council will stand in recess both for this Friday as well as all of next week to allow council members to participate in the National League of Cities Conference in Indianapolis. So after tomorrow, the next council meeting will be Tuesday, December 7th. All items approved today will go forthwith. Announcements, Mr. Garcetti.
Just a quick thank you. I wanted to thank the members of the Dream Center and Pastor Matthew Barnett and all his staff. We gave out about 2,000 turkeys in Echo Park at the Angelus Temple on Sunday with a lot of volunteers, and it was really wonderful. It was a record-breaking amount of turkeys, and everybody froze their fingers off who was handing them out, but it was a tremendous day there, and just wanted to give thanks to all the volunteers.
Mr. Cardenas?
2 points. I want to thank my staff and the community for coming together. We gave out several $1,000s worth of food and as many as 400 turkeys to the community. These were people that were identified by organizations in the district who identified families who really were needy. I received a letter from a woman yesterday who very shyly dropped it off to me as I handed her turkey and basket of food, and I read it later and I was touched that she mentioned that she had already told her kids that they weren't going to be able to eat on Thanksgiving. And she said, "Thank you very much, now we can. I don't have to be a liar to my children." I just want to remind us all that there are very needy families out there. There's always opportunity for us to try to go the extra mile. I want to thank the community, the business community, and all those who made that possible to be able to give that family and 400 other families the opportunity to eat on Thanksgiving. In addition to that, Mr. Labange, I ask you to stand with me because I've had to explain myself about 20 times today. I hope you're going to announce what we're going to do later on in a lighting ceremony. People are saying, "Tony, Thanksgiving isn't even here yet, and you're already wearing your Christmas tie." But in the spirit of Tom Labange inviting myself and my family to participate, I thought I would wear this spirited tie. And for those of you, I'm going to keep your names. And when you see my 6-year-old daughter who thinks this is the best tie in the world, I'm going to make sure you tell them what you told me.
Well,
Tom,
no,
please help me.
thank you for all your help and leadership. Tonight, the 9th annual DWP Light Festival will take place in Griffith Park, where over thousands and thousands of families come together and ride through the park. They enter from Los Feliz and Riverside, and they come through to the zoo area, and we're going to kick it off this evening. But it's great to see all of you are invited to come and attend, and any of the public listening, come out to Crystal Springs Drive around 7:45 by the old merry-go-round and watch the lights light up. I just wanted to thank you. And thank you, Tony. Look forward to seeing your family. Mr. President, may I add something here? If I may say, all of us have a great opportunity to serve this city, and one of our own members the other night had an opportunity to speak before 70,000 people at the Pasadena Rose Bowl. And our Janice Hahn, carrying the legacy of her father, the great Kenneth Hahn, spoke at the Billy Graham Crusade to over 70,000 people and was able to welcome her and get a message across about the importance of people and love and engaging and trying to help people. So I just thought it would be appropriate to salute Janice, because I was so proud to hear that she spoke so eloquently and represented our city and for her father. And the great thing about the history of looking back at people who served, whether Mr. Hahn, who also with his brother served on the city council, but in other local elements of government served, what they did and times. And like your father was the first to greet Martin Luther King at the airport, or the first to greet Billy Graham at a revival down on Grand Avenue, and so many things. So that's just an inspiration for all to just look out to meet those who come to Los Angeles and welcome them here. And you never know where you're going to be some 50 years later. It's your daughter who was speaking there, and that was very good. So Ms. Hahn, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Other announcements? Mr. Reyes.
Yes, I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the donors. My office will be passing out 400 turkeys for this Thanksgiving period for all those families that aren't in that position. So I want to thank the donors for their support and sharing some joy this holiday.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to also thank some donors that came forward to hand out gift certificates yesterday at the 8th District Constituent Center. We had almost 200 families there partaking in that last night. And I also have two announcements. One, December 4th, our second annual Christmas tree lighting at dusk will come about, and also have a toy giveaway, about 3,000 gifts for kids from 1 o'clock on December the 4th. Also on December the 7th is our first community budget meeting by the Budget Committee for the 8th, 9th, and 15th District. And so then we have other dates set where Eric's going to coordinate for the central part of the city, and we're going to ask Greg and Tony to coordinate for the Valley, and Ms. Misikowski will coordinate for the West Side. So we'll have 4 budget hearings in the community before we start the budget process. The first one, December 7th.
Ms. Perry.
Mr. Parks is going to provide an assist. Thank you very much. Holding up the Beanie Babies for the camera, and I told him to look precious so that when he goes home tonight to Bobby, she'll tell him how handsome, like that lady last week said you were handsome. Yeah, even though you dress like you work at the Olive Garden. That's right. All right. You got that? Okay, very much.
That's evidence.
That's evidence, that's right. The Beanie Babies are for sale today on our bridge for $5 a piece. All proceeds go to the American Diabetes Association. Remember that the annual Jingle Walk is December the 8th at 12 noon at the Wells Fargo Courtyard downtown on Hope Street. If you want further information, please call my office at 213-473-2009. And of course, you can always call Council President Alex Padilla at 213-473-7007. He will personally take all your calls. Thank you.
Money for diabetes research, absolutely. Other announcements today? Mr. Weiss?
We'll begin the ITGS hearing at, let's say, about 1:15.
And what about commerce?
Other announcements? Mr. Cardenas.
You're providing lunch for all of us?
Our joint meeting, I just talked to the chairwoman, Jan Perry. It'd be 1:15 instead of 1 o'clock.
Mr. President, we have a joint Arts and Parks Committee with the Plum Committee this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Discuss historic preservation and other things. Thank you.
Other final announcements? If not, do we have adjourning motions today? Please rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much. Sharon DeLugich, who worked with me and then worked also with Councilmember Ludlow, and now with you, Flack, had a cousin who passed away And I know Mr. Ludlow wanted to be part of this motion as well. Laura Goldstein Bissonnette, who passed away November 16th after a battle with breast and bone cancer. She leaves behind a husband, Ron Bissonnette, and 4 children, Richard, 14, Caroline, 11, Roland, 9, and Angie, 7. Also leaves behind her mother, Sandra Schickel, and her father, Robert Goldstein. She was Sharon's beloved cousin and childhood friend. Born in Chicago, grew up in the South Bay, California area, and then moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan, where she lived for the last 7 years with her family and was an integral member of the close-knit community there. May she rest in peace, and Sharon, as well as the rest of your family, we're thinking of you.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. I would like us to adjourn today in honor of George Giello, who passed away on November 18th in San Pedro. He was a San Pedro resident for 58 years and was a member of the Fishermen's Union, ILWU 33, Fishermen of America, Italian Catholic Federation, the U.S. Army veteran, Peck Park Senior Club. He had a strong passion for his family, for traveling, and for his garden. Mr. Giello is survived by his wife, Geraldine, his son, Tony, who's a dear friend of mine and is the chief engineer for the Port of Los Angeles, his daughters, Anna Marie, Giovanni, and Teresa, his brothers, Vito and Attilio, and his sister, Maria, as well as 9 grandchildren, 2 sisters-in-law, and numerous nieces and nephews. Mass was already offered this morning at 10:30 a.m. at Mary Star Catholic Church, and the family is asking that donations be made to the Mary Star High School Building Fund, the American Cancer Society, or the charity of your choice.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Oscar Romero Vergara, who passed away November 19th. He touched the lives of many people in South Los Angeles as a teacher at James Fauché Learning Center. In addition to teaching at that center, he was a community activist and also coached thousands of children in the Students Run LA. In addition to his service to the community, he was a devout husband, father, brother, uncle, teacher, mentor, and a friend to all. He graduated from Cal State University Northridge with a bachelor's degree in Chicano Studies. He's survived by his wife, Marina, of 11 years, and 4 children, ages 11 to 1-year-old. He grew up in a large family with strong Mexican roots and forever remembered by his friends and family. Funeral arrangements are pending.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, joining us here in council chambers today are several members of the Sikh community in Los Angeles. The district that I'm privileged to represent includes a very vibrant and active Sikh community, and we're joined here by several members of that community who would like to join all of you in adjourning in memory of an individual who was very special to all of them, His Holiness Sri Singh Sahib Yogi Bhajan, who passed away on October 6, 2004 from complications due to heart failure. He was 75 years old, and we're very privileged today that we're joined by Yogi Bhajan's wife, Bibi Inderjit Kaur Bahi Sahiba of Sikh Dharma, as well as their son, one of their sons, Ranbir Singh Bai. His Holiness was a pioneer in many fields with a deep devotion to the Sikh community. He was an inspiration and example and motivated thousands and thousands of people to embrace the Sikh way of life. In particular, he received worldwide recognition for his creation of 3HO, the Healthy, Happy, Holy Way of Life, which under his guidance really blossomed worldwide to well over 300 centers in 35 countries. Indeed, in 1994, 3HO became a member of the United Nations as a non-governmental organization. His Holiness is survived by his wife, their children, their 5 grandchildren, and I am told that he had a very special motto, which I'll repeat to all of you now. His motto was, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. We join you and your community in mourning, and we adjourn in his memory and in tribute to him today. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.